So I've been working a lot here recently on the front of my FJ Cruiser, and I want to install some stealth or hidden lights behind the grille. Well, in order to do that, I had to relocate the factory horn, and you can check that video out. I'll link it in the description. But today what we're going to do is we're actually going to go through with the installation and the full wiring of 2 sets of pod lights hidden behind the grille and a stealth light on my FJ Cruiser. Now, as you can see, the grille is already off and there's something missing right here, and that was that factory air horn. What I did is I relocated from there over to here on the passenger fender wall because there is a secondary clip or plug that's over there. And if you don't watch that video, I'll link it down in the description like I said in the intro. So here are the lights we're going to be installing now. These are not your traditional 2x2 pod lights. These are some big old 2x6 pod lights, and we're going to be putting these, like I said, right behind the grille. Now, this is a fairly simple installation. It's just mounting some lights and then running some wire. But the only way that I was able to do this is because I did have some special brackets lying around, because the area behind the grille here does have some pre-drilled holes within the fender that you can use for mounting some accessories. So the brackets that I'm using actually came from a company called Front Runner, which is the same company that made my roof rack. Now, this bracket was originally designed for a light bar to go on the front of the roof rack, but I already had this curved light bar and it looks like it might need to be tilted a little bit. And I also had these little FJ brackets already installed there. Now, I'm sure that you could find probably some other types of brackets, but I really did look everywhere for a video that did a stealth behind the grille light setup, and all I could find was some light bar stuff, or I found the videos where they put the light behind the bumper grille, but obviously I couldn't do that because I already had one there. So I will link these brackets in the description below, and hey, if you find some other brackets that would do a better job or could come up with something yourself, I would be curious to see, or let me know down in the comments. But for now, because these brackets were free, I've gone ahead and sized them up and measured them out and done a dry fitment and put in all of the hardware that came with the brackets, so that way the installation process for this video goes a lot smoother. Now, because this is a full installation and wiring, I went ahead and got a wiring harness with a fuse and a relay, and it is the split kind with a toggle switch, but I'm not going to be using the toggle switch that came with that kit because I'm going to be using the more OEM style ones that have the little push button that go in the dash of the FJ. I think that'll be a better, cleaner look. And of course, I'll link all that stuff down in the description. So first, what we want to do is we want to go ahead and pre-attach the connectors on each of the lights, so that way after they're installed it's just an easy plug and play when we get ready for the wiring. Now, this is a pretty simple process. The kit comes with these little spade connectors that you attach to the red and black ends of each of the lights, and then that will connect to another connector on the actual harness. So I'll go ahead and strip back these wires and attach these connectors on both of the lights. All right, so I got them connected with the little connectors, and I got some heat shrink on there. That way it cleans it up and makes it water resistant proof-ish. And I also labeled the positive one positive, so that way I don't forget. All right, so here is the install basically. So we're going to use the screw hole on the fender where the air horn was for this bracket, and it's going to kind of fit just like that. And then we're also going to use a pre-drilled hole on the fender over here, and this one will be this one, the furthest one to the right. And you can see we kind of had to shift the bracket and the light a little bit in order to get it lined up perfectly underneath the grille. Now, I have gone ahead and done a dry fit and a test with the grille to make sure it lines up perfectly and that they're angled properly, and that took a little while to make sure that everything looked nice and straight and flush, so you might have to do that a few times. Now, on this one you can see that it does get really close to blocking this little, honestly I'm not going to even pretend that I know what it is. If I remember to put it in the video, I'll write what it is right here, but you probably know what it is. But this is important not to block, I'm guessing. So I'm going to make it to where even though I install this here, I can still swivel the light out of the way if I need to access this thingamabob. So one more modification I'm going to make to the bracket is I'm going to be adding a little bit of double-sided sticky tape behind the bracket, so that way when it sits up here flush, it'll have something to kind of bite into on this side, because it might shift and swivel a little bit if it's not tight enough. So having that tape just sitting right there will hopefully hold it in place a little bit better. Now for the driver's side light, I'm just going to be using one of the bolts that came with the light setup, because it just so happens that the threads are identical to the threads that the air horn was mounted to and was using. So I'm just going to use this little guy to hold that bracket into place. However, that is not the case for this hole. It's just basically a straight hole. So I'm going to use the same hardware and also a locking nylon washer to fit in that spot to hold the bracket in. So let's install the easier one first. This is going to be the driver's side. So I'm going to take off a little piece of tape and just put it kind of right there. And this is some extra strength 3M double-sided tape. And again, that is just going to be reassurance that this will hold the bracket in place. The kit also came with these little washers that I'm going to use. So we'll put the bracket in place, thread the bolt through the washer, finger tighten it, and then using a size 13 socket, tighten it into place. That looks pretty good right there. Now the process on this side is very similar but different. We are going to fit our piece of tape about right there. That might have been a little long, that's okay. Peel it back. But this time we're going to run the nut through the thick washer on the front, and then on the back of the frame we're actually going to have another washer within a nylon locking nut attached to it, because this portion of the fender is a little bit thinner than the other portion. So we'll take our bracket with our light, we'll line it up as far as it'll go that way, because that's where we had it set. Take our washer, put it on the back side, holding everything in place. Take our locking nut, put it on the back, and slowly tighten it down to where our finger can't tighten it. And then we're going to take our crescent wrench and find the appropriate size, appropriate location. There we go. And then take our number 13 socket and tighten it until we can't tighten it. Boom. All right, got a little sweat going on here. So now is the portion of the video where you take your grill and you put your grill back up here and you check and make sure that the level of the lights is how you like it, and the kind of the side to side, I don't even know what I'm trying to say, just make sure everything lines up how you want it. And here is kind of a temporary look. It looks off just a little bit, but it might be because the grill is not quite attached on there yet. All right, so now it's time for the wiring portion of the video. The first thing we need to do is disconnect the ground or the negative terminal to the battery. So I'm just going to unscrew this portion right here, pull off this wire, and just set it out of the way so that way it can't touch. So the wiring harness is pretty straightforward. Comes in this little bag all wrapped up. It's got terminals already on it, but the problem is we're going to have to create some new terminals for these because they're not going to fit into our auxiliary fuse box. But it does come with a wiring guide So the orientation will actually be something like this. We have our two lights in the front of the grill. They'll come up through the firewall. The battery will be over here. This will go up in through the cabin, and then it's got a relay that's also attached to it. So let's go ahead and pull out the wiring harness and let's change out the terminals, and I'll show you what I'm using and why. So here's the connectors we're going to be using, and the reason why is because we have this auxiliary fuse board that we installed, and if you want to see the video to that, I'll link it in the description below. But basically what it is you have your negative ground terminals down here and your positive power terminals up here, and this serves as a way to kind of manage all the electrical stuff and also not clutter up the battery terminals, which can cause corrosion. So I found the best way to do this is to kind of just lay everything out on top of the location about where you want it to kind of flow, and then once you have a good general idea of where everything goes, that's when you start wiring and funneling things through the different little nooks and crannies to get them into their positions before you tighten and button everything back up with zip ties. All right, so wiring can be such an absolute mess sometimes, but I'll try to show you what we got going on here. So this is the wiring harness for our new grill lights, and I have a couple other things that also run to the front, things like the light bar, and also have some of those rafter lights. And so if you see other cords, that's what you're looking at. So this is going to snake down here and go through this little hole right here, and here's the other side of the hole, and you can see our this is our new wiring harness that's just coming up through here. It's going underneath, and this is the new wiring harness. It's going underneath this connector for the housing of the lights. It's coming through here, and the second connector is connecting this little first set here, and then the other connector, the long one, here's the other part of the wire, and we got a lot of extra leftover, but it's coming all the way over here. So now after I get everything kind of plugged in, I'm going to check to make sure it all works, and then we'll go back and kind of zip tie some stuff out of the way, so that way we don't have just a bunch of danglers. Now let me show you how we're going to wire it up over here and get it in through the firewall, so that way we can hook up the dash switch. So here's the toggle switch that came with the wiring harness kit, but we're not going to use this one. We're going to use this one that's more of an OEM rocker style push switch that's going to go into the dash, and this comes with an actual guide that wires up and tells you how to wire all of the things, and it also comes with the little clip that'll clip into the back of it with the 4 wires to attach here. Now I'm probably going to go for the wiring method to where it only lights up when it's activated, so that way it's not constantly pulling electricity, but we'll see what happens. So I'm going to take this coat hanger and I'm going to poke through this little gasket right here in order to thread the wires of the wire harness through the firewall into the cab of the car.
Now that the wires are all run through, it is time to wire up the switch into the dash. Now, I do have a couple open spots that I can use, but I'm going to have to do a little manipulation. And in order to do that, we have to remove the console. You start by screwing out the gear shifter and also the 4-wheel drive shifter. Pull these 2 tabs. Unscrew these 2 bolts with a socket wrench or with some power tools. Lift up this emergency brake flap thing, and then from there it's just lifting out and fidgeting and manipulating the top part of the center console off of the center console, and then there's a couple more screws you have to loosen up. Also 2 more underneath the switch panel. Once you do that, you can slide out and pop out the switch panel that reveals all the wires hidden behind it. And you can see here's where we want to put our new switch. that we have all wired up, and I went ahead and soldered a couple of the connections and heat shrinked and electrical taped them. After we ran the wire through the dash and behind the console, it's time to insert our switch into the open position, and then it's as simple as just connecting the green clip to the back and pushing the button to make the lights turn on.
So I ended up working pretty late into the night, and I just kind of finished getting everything buttoned all back up. So let me show you what the finished product looks like. All right, so here is the front of the FJ, and you can see our hidden stealth pod lights there hanging out in the back, and I'm gonna go turn them on so you can see what they look like. Woo, it's a lot of light. Now I'll probably go back and get some wire loom and tidy up that wiring a little bit better, but I've got so much wiring and cabling and lights and accessories that I'm probably going to think about getting a new system a little bit later. But for now, thank you so much for watching me rig my ride for my adventure, one mod at a time.